Hey everybody, welcome to the Three Gun Show. I'm your host, Dave Hartman, and with me tonight is Dillen Easley. Dillen, welcome back to the podcast, my friend.
Good to be back.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Three Gun Show. Ha! And we got a little bit of reverb there. Okay, we fixed that problem. Okay, we're new at this. Should we start that one over? Dillen, welcome back to the podcast.
Good to be back, bud.
It's great to see you, man. I'm excited to talk about tonight's topic, but before we get to that, let's just tease it real quick here. So, 10 things that you're doing that are holding you back in Three Gun. 10 things you're doing wrong. We're going to talk about that one here. But before we get into that, what's going on with Dillen recently? What you been up to, man?
I've been playing an open a little bit. Getting ready to shoot a little more USPSA. So put the pistol to work. Actually signed up for 4 bigger USPSA matches, and I'm finding that helps a lot with shooting pistol well in Three Gun, hitting more alphas and less lucky misses that almost turn into penalties.
Yeah, we've talked about that, you and I guess offline several times before, and I've noticed over the last couple of years you kind of got away from shooting USPSA, but so now you're heading back that direction, huh?
Yeah, I usually find that once my pistol game starts getting a little weak, it's usually because I'm not shooting enough USPSA. So I'm going to head back toward that a little more, shoot a few more locals, and hit up a couple of bigger ones. I did that a few years ago, seemed to really help, and that way when I go into my next stage plan for Three Gun, come around the corner and there's 6 paper and 4 steel or whatever, I know exactly how many shots I need, where they need to be, and the targets can get taken care of a little quicker.
So you've been playing with the Honcho recently, both in limited and in open. So what's the plan here? Are you going to be shooting 1 division, 2? What's going on?
So I'm going to shoot open at the Oklahoma section, and I'm loading major ammo. So a little bit of 9 grenade, but it's been working pretty well. I'm going to go through and switch things back up and shoot TAC ops with the gun switch back to irons for the Valiant multi-gun. Then go back to open for USPSA Free State, then back to TAC, then back to open for USPSA again, back to TAC for Three Gun, and back to open for USPSA Area 3. So I'm gonna jump back and forth. I've got a lot that I can play with.
Yeah, so we were kind of discussing that at the Gadsden Shotgun Championship, and like how do you choose like which division to play with? So. You said that all those USPSA matches are going to be an open division. Why open?
Honestly, I'm having fun with it. So shooting major with 40, I don't really have a lot of stuff in 40. I don't have reloading dies for 40. I've gotten rid of all that stuff a long time ago when I got rid of my last 40 pistol. So I can either load a bunch of 9 major instead of my 9 minor for open and Three Gun, and go shoot and have fun, or I can go back and buy all that stuff or buy factory M140, which honestly doesn't sound that much fun.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, if you put it in the die context, I mean that makes total sense now. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so we got people hanging with us on YouTube in the chat right now, and Scott Green says, "Love that you're shooting some open."
Hopefully, I'll make my way out there and shoot with him a little bit in it.
Yeah, so Scott Green just took his Dillen Easley voodoo doll down off the shelf and put a little red dot on its back and put it back up there.
Right up where Fralix used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, Fralix is gone now. He's off shooting PCC for a while. Hopefully he comes back. We'll see.
Yeah,
but
sure.
All right, man. Well, let's jump into this topic here. So so you brought this up. You're like, hey, we should do like a top 10 kind of list, which are always awesome for titles and getting people to listen to them. But the list you came up with, I'm really digging here. So we're gonna run down this list. I'll mention the headline, and then you kind of explain to me and to the audience what your thought process is here. And once again, this is 10 things that you're doing wrong in Three Gun, 10 things that are be holding you back from progressing in your game. So. Number 1, bad optic mounting.
Yeah, you learn a little more about this when you pick up an optic sponsor. So I got to learn some of the things that people make mistakes with, and I'm I'm probably one of the weird guys. I go through instructions and look at exactly how to do everything because I want it done as perfect as possible the first time. And what I found is not everybody has that same level of OCD. And not to throw Adam Weber under the bus, but he was having some horrible times with his rifle. I finally just told him, just give me the damn thing and let me see if I can fix it. And when I took it back, I found that the optic mount's actually sliding back and forth on the rail, and then so he never snugged it forward. So we taught him about that aspect. And as a police officer, they always ran a red dot that kind of locked in and had a different type of mount, which was fine. So then I also found that the rings were tightened down to what I would call plenty tight, not exactly a spec, other than it popped 3 times when I'm tightening it down. So I got all that stuff fixed and got his rifle back to him, and the thing was, hitting everything that he pointed it at. And all of a sudden, he realized that he doesn't suck nearly as bad as he thought. He was able to hit targets when before it was, can't figure out why it's low now and high later.
Yeah, it's crazy how much torque on your optic mount, on your scope mount, matters. Like I know that there's a torque spec for everything. I've worked on cars for a long time, but it's crazy how much it matters. For example, I dealt with this myself. So first time I took the Galil Ace out to a local match, I threw my I think I threw the Razor on top. It might have been the Viper. But I threw a scope 1 to 6 on there, and it had just come off my 3-gun rifle, so the rings were torqued. But at the time, I was like, embarrassing. I was in a bit of a hurry, didn't find my torque wrench, and I just made it tight enough, right?
Yep.
And on the rail, and I couldn't hit anything, and like it was all over the place, and I mean, it was like minute of pizza box at like 100 yards. It was crazy. So I, after that embarrassing thing where, I'm like thinking like, man, there's something wrong with this rifle here. It's crazy. I went through, checked everything, made sure it was clean. I assembled it correctly, and I'm like, you know what? It's probably that scope mount. So I took the torque wrench to take it off, and it was like way over torqued to mount it to the rail. And I was thinking like, of all things that shouldn't matter, like mounting it to the rail shouldn't matter, but damn, it does matter. And so I loosened it up, just torqued it down, didn't even take it off the Picatinny, and took it right back out to the range, and boom, it was grouping just fine.
Yeah. You
can't believe how much that matters.
Actually wrong, and it's just a part of the process was mixed. And with both Warren and Vortex have torque wrenches and torque drivers, and I've got a set from each one, and I'm able to use the Vortex one on multiple things, including actually on my pistol. But yeah, if you go and throw that thing off, I've noticed several times where I'll have like a little group over here, a little group over here, and the next thing you know, it's like, okay, well, this is the group that I get when it's halfway on the rail. This is the group I get when it's forward, when it's too loose. As long as it keeps bouncing around, I dump it in a dump barrel and it hits back on 0 again, and then it starts to wane away from it. Well, it's loose, it's moving.
Yeah, I think you can see it over my shoulder right here, Dylan. That is my Vortex torque wrench, and it has a special place on my bench, and I do not do anything without it now.
That travels with me to every match.
Yeah, I do travel with that one too. It's got a nice little case that it comes in. But we've got a funny comment in the chat here. James Robinson, I had a ring come loose, and I was shooting the 5th plate from the right and hitting the 2nd plate, and then it got weird. So yeah. And then Scott Green, of course. At least you haven't had a scope fall completely off your gun twice.
That's a little under torque there, a little too far.
Yeah. Little more elbow grease there, Scotty. Yep. Okay, so and then we got one more. Patrick Beckham. Any big problems in using QD scope mounts? So I'm kind of against the grain on this one. Like I mostly use ones that I have to tighten and torque myself, but I've actually had luck with QD scope mounts. How about you, Dylan?
I use the Warren X skulls on most things, and then the new Skyline on my 6 Creedmoor and 6.5 Creedmoor, and so both of those require a set torque value. But I have had good luck with the ones that are QD, and I've never had one that's been an issue because they'll usually have a set of instructions. That'll be you need to torque it to this point where the lever's 3/4 the way across, and so you're probably getting right around that correct torque value with that.
Yeah, I think the American Defense Manufacturing ones are really good. So if you got one of those, I don't think you can go wrong. There's several other ones that are good too. All right, number 2, doing one thing at a time, doing only one thing at a time.
And notice this quite a bit, especially with newer shooters. They will run all the way to the end of a bay, know that their gun is about empty, then stand there, maybe fire a shot, run it empty, or they're going to stand there and reload. If you look at, we're shooting timed events, so if you're not doing two things at once most of the time, you're going to fall way behind. The guy who goes 1 for 1 on a stage, you can't figure out how you beat him by 10 to 20 seconds on a 40-second stage. It's that huge chunk of time just standing there and doing one thing, then running, then standing there and doing one thing again. It's kind of the same thing. If you can shoot great big pieces of paper and move forward while you do it with your pistol or your rifle, why not? Do it while you move forward instead of stand there and hammer 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of paper that could have all been shot, especially as close as some of them are.
Yeah, this is a big one. Like with shotgun, I see it all the time. People like running 15 steps into a position and then standing and loading.
Yeah. All wasted time. You're sitting there, you could have done two things at once, and you would have been shooting when you got there, not, or at least finishing your load. I don't have a problem with putting the last 2 shells of a quad load in when you get there, but to run there and then mount the gun, start loading, it's like, oh, this is like watching grass grow.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, Dylan, number 3, slapping the trigger. I feel like I'm personally attacked on this one and number 4, or excuse me, number 5.
So I've done this quite a bit. I find that the more USPSA I shoot and the more paper I shoot in big steel, then the harder time I have with shooting long range rifle. And we all know that long range rifle is a big separator in a lot of matches. And so what you'll find is you're shooting a 600-yard gong like you're shooting a 3-yard paper, and you can't just sit there and slap the trigger when you're shooting that. Same thing, several matches, I know we shot at the Vortex Shooter Source, some steel that was out at 30, 40 yards with a pistol, and the year before we shot it out to like 100. Well, if you're slapping the trigger, you can't be shocked when you're 8 feet shy of that target when you're hitting the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to go through and break a clean shot, and then sometimes, follow through like what a PRS shooter would and hold that trigger back for a second, follow through, see your hit, and then go through and let the trigger back out to reset. So it's a little bit different when you start talking about far shots, tight shots, pistol, shotgun, rifle, doesn't matter, because we've seen some slug targets at 150 yards. So slap that Briley trigger on my shotgun, and next thing you know is that slug misses on a 18 by 24 gong at 100 yards.
Yeah, I feel like the shotgun slugs are the one that I never shoot brace at all. I always shoot offhand on that just to reduce the points of contact on the shotgun. But I feel like that is the one that I spend the most time getting into my offhand position with, because they're so valuable, because they're 2 3/4 inch long. You can only fit so many in the tube, and they're also like $1 a piece. So slapping the trigger or moving shortly after you break the shot can drastically affect the point of impact of that slug.
Well, especially when you're talking about the least accurate gun with the least accurate ammo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you talk about limited capacity with it on top of that. It becomes pretty precious to actually hit that stupid gong.
Yeah, and it's moving so slow that if you've got like a 24-inch barreled shotgun like I do, like it takes a long time for it to leave the barrel. So any little movement after you break that shot can affect where it goes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can influence it quite a bit.
Yeah, I like that one. All right, number 4, shooting splits. Dylan,
so throw somebody else under the bus here.
I know. I thought splits get chicks. Come on, man.
Yeah, they're great for Instagram. They make you look crazy fast. So I was actually shooting with Josh Tarrant here a year or two ago at the Trigun, and we went through and we had similar stage times, but he had 2 misses on paper, and I had a clean run, so I had a little advantage on him where he should have been right there with me. And I had a quick talk with him afterwards about man, it looks so fast ripping 11 splits on paper, uh, but if you can go through and hold a bit of a cadence and shoot, pop, 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 instead of just ripping splits, get a sight picture of the next target, rip 2 splits, sight picture of the next target, because you're eventually going to drift one off. And that's what he ended up doing. Now, if you go through and you watch Josh shoot, he's cleaned that up a lot. And I mean, I think he went and shot the JPPCC match, when his gun was running, when he was shooting with me. I mean, he'd clean that up quite a bit. Next thing you know, all of a sudden on the stages where he was doing well, he's right up there with everybody. And it was something he was able to clean up real easy, and something I see a lot of guys, and this is both in 3-gun and USPSA. They're all about one sight picture and then splits for chicks, good for Instagram, bad for your stage time. And you go through and there'll be Alpha Delta, Alpha Mike, Alpha Delta in USPSA, and then in 3-gun they're praying they got an alpha on some of the paper because they sure as hell didn't get a second shot on it.
Yeah, I definitely see that a lot, and a lot of times that second shot goes like super high because their pistol like either has not come back down or they're just completely off target, like pushing the grip or something. So yeah,
you can usually hear it from the next bay over.
Yeah,
you're gonna go through this pop up, pop up, pop up, and you're going, okay, yeah, I know exactly what that guy's doing. I don't even have to see the targets to know he had a miss.
There was a lot at the team match. There was a lot of that going on. There was a lot of like super aimed not double taps, but 2 shots on paper, where you're making like a 1-inch group.
Yeah.
And then there was the complete opposite, which was, like you said, the one side picture and the two trigger pulls, and not a lot in between.
Yeah. Usually you'll find the guy who has a 2 group next to each other. He's figured out, hopefully pretty soon, that he can go a little faster.
Yeah.
I took a class with Merle Eddington, a guy that's been in the AMU and everything else, and he's going through. He's like, you can use the entire A zone, all of it. It's like 6x11 or whatever the size is. You can use the whole thing. That's the accuracy you need, is that whole A zone. You don't have to hit the center with both shots. You just got to get it in the A. Like, okay, so I can open the accuracy up a little bit and go a little faster, but I still have to see that dot or see those sights.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. In fact, I remember you telling me that like 3 years ago when we were shooting an indoor match. In Kansas City. Damn, this has been 3 years. That's been a long time, man.
It's been a while. It's been a long time since you've had good barbecue.
How dare you? Yeah, I must admit, I forgot what the name of it was, but that place you took me was some pretty damn good barbecue.
That was the at-home barbecue Wabash where I grew up.
Yeah.
So,
that's
good.
Best barbecue I've had in a state not starting with T and ending in Texas. So, let's see. We talked about shooting splits with one side picture. Number 5. Okay, another personal attack here. Holding your breath while shooting. Is that not how you're supposed to do it?
That is not. So I shot the Zombies in the Heartland match again, and it was it's a very new shooter friendly match. So your mid-pack shooters and your people who are just starting out, they have a great chance to shoot a match that is not going to be over their head. It's a lot of fun, theme oriented. But I noticed a lot of people go through, they're shooting their pistol and they hit the first 3 shots, and then it starts going haywire and they can't hit anything after. And it's not because they sped up or they slowed down. They're literally going, and then about after 3 or 4 shots in, their hands are starting to shake. And then, luckily if they're an amateur, we can go, hey, breathe. You need a little oxygen in there to get things going again. When I'm at a 3-gun match, usually when I see it is either after a long run or especially with long range. And I watch a lot of people do it with long range. And all you're doing is increasing your heart rate and making that reticle move more. And so I noticed it a lot with long range rifle.
And with lack of oxygen, like your vision goes away too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's also not really good on long range.
No, you get a higher heart rate, higher blood pressure, vision starts to drop. It's like all the bad things for a scoped rifle at distance.
Yeah. So when like in that particular situation that you're talking about, like after like a long jungle run or something like that, when you have to go prone and shoot or get in a crouch position behind a barricade and shoot, like what is your breathing pattern like?
I'll usually, depending upon how much movement there is before that, I'll break things down maybe 10 yards before I get there on a long run. And it'll start to focus on breathing, focus on getting things under control, getting that heart rate in place, and then, kind of making that area, where I have to go into and get a good position. I'll take my time on that aspect because if I take 3 seconds there, that's three missed shots. Okay, well, I can probably go 1 for 1 or have 1 to 2 misses versus laying down and burning through a 30-round mag trying to hit 4 or 5 targets while I'm breathing hard or holding my breath. So it's
That's a
going to
good
be
point.
dependent upon how much I'm pushing the heart rate before that.
Gotcha. That's a very good point. Okay. So as you're coming into a position, you're breaking it down. Like, for example, you're taking your rifle off your back if it's slung or something. You're loading your mag. You're switching from 1x to 6x. Then you're
Yep.
doing the deep breathing in, out, filling the lungs, and then getting into position.
Yeah, usually I'll start breathing in through my nose, and then I've noticed some issues that in the summer, especially, my glasses fog over. So I'll try to breathe in through my nose and then out through my mouth, and I'll try and blow air down. Try not to fog my glasses up while I get there because there's not much worse than shooting long range where you can't even see through your glasses to the lens on your scope.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Scott Green chimes in. He says, yes, thank you for saying not to hold your breath. You don't run out of breath while zeroing your gun. Why would you do anything different during the stage?
If you ever want to see it, just sit behind your rifle at max power, hold your breath, and then watch what happens to the reticle when you're holding it like you'd be shooting. That thing starts to dance all over the place.
Yep. Yeah, that's a fact, man. I've seen it many times on the stage.
Well, looking through the scope, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. All right. So number 6, and this one's like near and dear to my heart. Unknown Zero.
Yeah, we get this a lot. I zero with 55 grain at home at 50 yards. Where's the 77 grain going to hit? Well, it's going to hit wherever it's at because you didn't zero for that ammo, and see that quite a bit. And usually, I'm pretty OCD about it. I want to know exactly where everything is. So a lot of times, I will try to actually check my zero and even adjust it at the range that I'm going to be shooting at if possible. So last year at Vortex Shooter Source, I laid down and went prone and shot out to I think 500 or 600 yards, and I had a 2-click adjustment left and a 1-click adjustment up to have it perfect again at 200, and then proceeded to go through the stages that I got to shoot before I DQ'd, and went damn near 1 for 1 on every long range stage. And that little bit of knowing exactly where that is makes a difference. The other aspect with that is, knowing your velocity and your dope. See a lot of guys, they know they're zeroed at 200 or they know they're zeroed at 50 or 100 or whatever, but they have no idea what the velocity is other than what the box said. And
Yes.
that's not the way to do that.
Yeah, I think if there's no other option, like if you are in a pinch, then yeah, you can use the box is better than nothing. But taking the time to go in and do that research, find a chronograph, see what the actual velocity is, and then look up like your BC and stuff like that. Go through all the tables, figure all that stuff out, and then put it into like a free app like Streetlock, or I know that I have the Streetlock Pro, which is a paid app, but I think they have a free app as well. And there's several other ones that you can use. That is key to success in long range.
Oh yeah, I mean, regardless if you're using a BDC or a Miller MOA reticle, I've got the new Hornady app on my phone that goes through all of the 4DOF calculations, if you will, in the calculator, and I can go and punch it in for mils on my 6 Creedmoor and 6.5 Creedmoor and kind of check everything out. And then I use Streetlock Pro for 3-gun because I'm using a BDC reticle with the JM1. And I can go through, I enter in all my information. I can even go out and verify it. And let's say that it says I'm supposed to be 600 yards on the 600-yard hold, but I'm hitting the very top of the target. I can make an adjustment and true that calculator, even if my chronograph reading wasn't perfect. So, I mean, I'm using a magneto speed, so the good part is pretty much every time I've stuck it on the gun, it's giving me good data.
Yeah, the cool thing about that magneto speed too is it's small enough you can like probably take it with you to a lot of ranges too, especially if you're driving.
Yeah, I mean, you're
Like
talking
for matches.
two inches by 4 inches by what, 15?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it'll fit in your glove box.
Yeah, those things are pretty sweet. So another thing I'll say on the Unknown Zero, and I did this when I was a new shooter. I see a lot of newer people doing this, and they may not even know they're doing this. And then a lot of my like tactical buddies really do this, and it's maddening when you try to explain it to them. But when I look to my left here, I have three types of 223 on my shelf. I have ORR Tactical. It's a small manufacturer out of Houston. I have Fiocchi, and it's just Fiocchi 55 grain FMJ. That OR is 55 grain FMJ. And then I've got Federal American Eagle 55 grain FMJ. So all three of those are going to have a different point of impact coming out of your gun because they're different rounds. So just saying like I have 55 grain, dude, there's differences between what I'm blanking on the brand here for some reason, but PMC.
Yeah, you've got two different PMCs that you can get.
Yeah, there's PMC and PMC Gold, and then there's PMC X-Tac or something like that.
I think it's either
like all three of those are different.
Three different
bronze,
ones
gold,
from the
and
same
X-Tac.
company.
God, what is the name of the company? How come I can't remember that?
I don't remember PMC. I know there was also Privy Partisan used to have the same thing as well.
Somebody help me in the chat. I'm drawing a blank here. It's been a long time since I bought that. But anyhow, 55 grain does not equal 55 grain. No. 75 grain does not equal 75 grain. The other thing is when you're talking like precision rounds, if you go by Sierra 77 or 77 grain Sierra Match Kings, you can buy that in Fiocchi. You can buy it in Federal. You can buy, on and on and on. Like there's a ton of people that load that projectile, but they all load it different, and it's all going to act different through your gun.
Yeah, they've all got a different powder that burns at a different rate, and you have your barrel length, and depending upon the powder and how fast it burns and the velocity you're getting, just because the velocity's close doesn't mean that they're going to hit the same point of impact. One's going to have a little higher or lower pressure behind it.
Even the primer.
Yeah.
Like if you have the same projectile, same case, same powder, and the primer's different, like that matters. And it's incredible because like if you're just standing 20 yards and you're flinging it at a paper, you're not going to notice. But once you like lie prone and you actually try to hit something far away, it really, really matters.
Well, it also makes a difference in pistol too. I was talking to BJ Norris, and I was loading 9 major for open for USPSA, and I had some primed brass that had CCI primers, and went out and shot it, and the load is perfect. It's 172 power factor. It's gonna be great for USPSA. Shoots wonderful. I switched over and had some prime brass had Federal primers, and I load those, and they're making 167. Well, that's a little too close for comfort if I'm going to go to a major match and possibly get bumped to minor and have my scoring all messed up. So I'm going to have to go through and make sure that, hey, number one, it was dropping the correct amount of powder and that it is making the correct power factor before I go to that. And it's literally just a pistol primer to a pistol primer. We're not even talking about a hotter rifle primer, Magnum primer, or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like all those little things do add up and do make a huge difference. All right, so number 7, new untested gear or ammo.
Yeah, so kind of same thing with the ammo. You got the guy who hears that he's supposed to shoot heavier bullets. So on his way to the match, he stops up at Cabela's and buys 2 boxes of Hornady 73 grain ELD match, and then 2 boxes of Federal Gold Medal match. Takes him to the range and can't figure out why he's not hitting anything. Then you go through, you got the guy who's going to throw a new handguard on and just installs it, doesn't realize that it's hitting his gas block or some other issue. And
or just the fact that you installed a handguard, like you untorqued your barrel nut and then you torqued a new barrel nut on there and then installed your handguard.
And then did you torque it correctly as we go back to the torque specs? I'm OCD about how I torque a barrel nut and exactly what it needs to be torqued to. And I've seen people where their handguard slips off and rotates because the barrel nut's loose. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, luckily the gas block's going to keep it from twisting all the way off and having it come off the gun while you're firing. But there's a lot of stuff. There's a couple local shooters that have been out, and you're going like, man, your pistol's not running great. Yeah, I was messing with it last night, and I did this, and I ground on that, and I did this, and modified this. I'm going, why in the hell would you bring that to a match? Like, that needs to be tested out long in advance before you bring it to a competition. And I mean, I am kind of a little guilty of it, because when I shot the Vortex Shooter Source, I shot Ruben shotgun, and I'd never shot a box fed shotgun before. But that was kind of I'm going to go have fun, and I had an offer to use it. Hell, why not? And it was a bad idea. I don't recommend it here, especially if somebody's wanting to be competitive. Don't grab something brand new and take it to, especially a major match. Club match, maybe.
Resist the urge. Resist the urge.
Well, that decision cost me about $3,500. So, resist that urge. Save yourself some money.
Well, understand also that any little, especially on your rifle, like any little thing you change is going to change everything, right? Because it's a system. So if you change your buffer spring, that has the potential to change the accuracy of your gun.
Yeah.
If you change your muzzle device, that is absolutely going to change the accuracy of your gun. Like, you need to verify everything after you change anything.
Yeah, I've seen that a few times where somebody will take their buffer out, pull all the weights out of it, put it back in, and go shoot it, and go, that feels pretty good. And then they went from 3/4 inch groups to 2-inch groups because there wasn't quite enough reciprocating mass to let the bolt unlock consistently. And so, they made a stupid change without testing it, and then went back, put the weights back in, and finished the match, and they're fine. Little things like that can add up, and they can kind of bone you in a match, especially if you're paying for a major match. To me, it really doesn't make sense. You got too much money invested.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially when there's any sort of travel involved. I mean, come on. James Robinson in the chat here says, you allow your friend to put a drop kit on your shotgun, but he really put a rise kit on it for you.
Would be that'd be a little mean.
Yeah, a little bit. James, did you guys shoot the same division? Just asking. All right, man. Number 8, poor body positioning. What do you mean by that?
So, a couple things on that. So, bad position for positional shooting, like for long range. Rob Romero a long time ago told me, if you can go prone, period, end of story. And I found that to be true 99% of the time. And I'll see people who will walk up and then stand on a barricade and just stand next to it and try and shoot with one little point of contact shooting off of it. That's usually not going to yield a lot of success. And then I'll also see people go through with body position when they're not supported off of a barricade or prone, and they'll run in to shoot their pistol, and the next thing you know, you look up and, their right foot is sitting with the heel up and they're on their toe with all their weight on their left leg, and the knee's kind of bent and they're leaning hard to the left, and they can't figure out why they keep missing that piece of steel. And you watch a top shooter, they'll run in and they'll keep their weight low, both knees bent, a little bit of extra weight on their toes, not on their heels, and they'll be very balanced.
Yeah, that's something that I personally have to work on, is the 1 foot up off the ground thing. Long time ago, when I was training for an obstacle race, I rolled my ankle and got a high ankle sprain. I was in a boot for 10 weeks, and so my ankle basically froze up, right? So locked up and on my right side. So now, consistently, when I stand, I will stand like damn near on my toe on my right side, and it's something I have to consciously think about. So recently, Darren Spetto was shooting with me, or I was shooting with him, whatever, at training day, and he pointed that out, and it just kind of reminded me in my head, like, oh yeah, I do that like all the time. That's like something I need to concentrate on and work to fix.
Well, the physical trainer that I've been working with for the last year or so, Tony Wells, one of the things that he was making me do is sending him match video. And and this goes all the way back to when I took a class from Earl Eddington. He's like, drop your ass to the ground standing up. It's really hard to stand up with your toe, or up on your toe with your heel up if you're squatted down.
Yes.
So if you
that's a
drop
very
your
good
butt
point.
down and squat, you're not going to be able to bring that toe up. It's going to be awkward as hell. And so he started barking at me about the same thing, because if you look at it as an entering and exiting position aspect, you stand all the way up, and especially if you start getting up on the toe, what are the movements you have to do to get back down to run to the next position? It's wasted time on that front for USPSA, but for 3-gun, we're shooting smaller steel, usually farther away, and you can't hit the damn thing. So if you were to squat down, stay low and aggressive, you can't get up on your toe to do that. The opposite of that, what I found, is that the people who are get back on their heels. I noticed this probably more with female shooters or with junior shooters, that especially with a heavy gun, shotgun seems to be the worst. They're kind of leaning back and trying to offset and balance that weight. And then you'll watch them, they'll fire a shot, they get moved, they reposition, they're back on their heels again, they fire a shot, they get moved again. And so trying to get that person to figure out that they can handle things better if they just literally bend their knees and squat down a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Huh. All right, so get my butt to the ground. That's what I just learned.
Yeah, I know Merle threatened to tie a rope from my belt to my ankles if I didn't do it in the class. So.
Yeah, the prone thing has bitten me a couple times before too, because I think like, oh, that's only 400 yards. It's like a chip shot. But then once I take like 3 or 4 shots at it, I'm like, damn it, that would have been really much better to do. This weekend at the DC Project team match, I shot on a squad with a bunch of people, but one of them is James Gill, and so James he's a really cool dude to shoot with, because he has a lot of good. He has like a ton of experience, and if you're open and you're willing to listen, like he'll drop some knowledge bombs on you.
Oh, yeah.
And there was this shooting position. We only had to shoot like, I think it was like 260 or 280 yards or something like that, and they were I think full size IPSC targets, but there were 6 of them. And there was barrels that were really stable, like your dump barrel, and then there was like a table laid over on its side, and then there was kind of a little bit of a clearing where it looked like, oh, I could probably go prone there. And so Gil, during the walkthrough, I was like, hey man, what are you gonna do here? And he's like, for a position? I'm like, yeah, what do you think? That table looks pretty good. He's like, can you go prone? I'm like, yeah, you can probably go prone right here. And he's like, he just kind of puts his arms out like that. You finish the sentence, Dave. Like, oh yeah, then I go prone. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I've seen that look on James' face before, and it is pretty comical. But I know James and I had a conversation at one point in time about if he were putting a class on for 3-gun or for whatever it may be that's rifle oriented, how many people would be pissed off that the first part of the class would literally be sitting in a classroom learning about how to set their optic up for them, the stuff that would go all the way back to number 1, and then going through and the simple things like, hey, can you lay prone and make this shot? Yeah, every time. Okay. But when you do it in a match, why don't you go prone and do it then? So if you know you can do it, quit doing other things that you think might be a hair faster. And yeah, if you were to go on that tabletop and have one target, rip a shot, boom, and hit it and then move on, yeah, you might have a half second, but you don't. You miss 6 times and cuss, and then then you go prone, you make the hit, or you get lucky on one of your slapped trigger pulls and happen to hook up for it.
Yeah, and it's all playing the odds, right? So you want the highest percentage shot, the highest odds of me making that shot, and that is prone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the I had a conversation with somebody today that called me about shooting USPSA matches, and I happened to win the last local club match. And he's like, man, what have you been doing? I'm like, nothing. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, I haven't been doing anything. I haven't been dry firing. I haven't been live firing. I'm like, I've literally just been doing what I always do. I said, but I went into the match going like, I'm not going to take any big risk. I'm just going to go through, shoot as many alphas as possible, try and move quickly and do what I know you're supposed to do. Play it safe, right? And just do it right. And I ended up, winning, which was definitely pretty cool, because we've got some pretty strong USPSA shooters in Kansas City. And it came down to, hey, here's a high percentage shot. I'm not going to go over here and take some off-camber shot at 20 yards on a piece of steel. Nope, I can get that from this port here, tink, hit it, and then move on. And I didn't have to have 3 makeup shots to get to drive it down, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, take the best shot you can. The highest odds of success. All right, Dylan, number 9, lack of stage plan. Doesn't everyone have a stage plan when they go into a stage?
Seasoned shooters, the guys at the top will. Some of the guys in the middle and the guys at the bottom, a lot of times I either notice that they don't have a stage plan or they have a very lacking stage plan. They don't have any idea of where they need to do things. And what you'll see is kind of the prairie dogging aspect. I shoot 3 targets here, and then I know something's coming up, so they drop their gun down toward the ground. You'll see their shoulders drop, and they'll kind of move a little bit over until they find it. Then they'll pull the gun up and shoot. Then they'll kind of walk over again, pull the gun up and shoot. And if you knew what your plan was, you'd be like, all right, I've got to break at this tree. I've got to run over here. It's about 12 feet, and I'm going to shoot from here. I'm going to get these 3 while moving. And if you kind of just plan out a basic idea of what you need to do, you're going to be about 10 times more successful than the person who's, eyes up, look around, shoulders down. Oh, there it is. So you're also going to have a lot less penalties because you know exactly how many targets you're supposed to shoot.
Yeah, that happened to me at the Gadsden match. There was a stage where I didn't walk through it nearly as much as I should have, and I couldn't remember if it was like 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, and I definitely missed one. And I was like, yeah, I think I got them all. And you're like, yeah, it's a pretty good run, except for that one you left standing back there.
Yeah, which, by the way, is 15 seconds added to your time, which screws your entire run.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I showed up late to that match, and as I rolled up to it, the breaching stage was the
that was my stage.
One.
Yes, that was the one.
I was so worried about forgetting one. I'm like, why couldn't I show up to one of the little 8-round stages where I stand in a box, shoot 8 rounds, and then we go to the next one where you stand in the box and shoot 8 rounds. I had to show up to a giant field course where I had to breach it, load all my mags up for box-fed gun, and then go shoot it. And the only thing I had to go off of was one of the squad mates. I think it was Billy York. Goes through and he goes, all right, you're going to have 5 on the right, 4 on the left, 3 on the right, 3 on the left, 4 on the right, 2 on the left, everything at the end. I'm like, okay. And I start going through over and over and over in my head. I'm like, I have not seen these. This is going to be a disaster. Luckily, I got everything, and I don't know if my time was good or not. But then I had to turn around and shoot it in TAC with a tube-fed gun and try and remember where to load, too, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that 4 on the right near the end is the one that I thought was 3.
Yeah, I was lucky. I pulled up early enough, and I think my first shot I actually dropped the first 2. So I pulled the trigger 3 times, but happened to get a double. Otherwise, I'm not sure I would have seen that 4th one. By that time, it was like 16, 47, 32. I don't remember what the hell he said. Just find the target and shoot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, find the orange things.
Yeah.
All right. So then one of the things that the notes that you have down here is flow and visualization. So what do you mean by flow?
So if I'm going to go through a stage plan, I want to be able to smoothly move from one thing to the next. I don't want choppiness. Choppiness is slow. So if I can, one of the things that, like I'll do in USPSA is I'll do inside out, outside in, or outside in, inside out, right to left as I move from left to right. So if I have a port that I can shoot as I'm moving through, I'm going to shoot across. I'm not going to run up, post into the center of it, and then swing my gun through the port. So I want to have that where my body can move continually through the stage if possible, and only have to stop if I'm stopping for a large bank of targets. And what you'll notice is that most of your top shooters, you're going to go through and see them, and they're going to fairly fluidly move through the stage. And you have to plan that in advance that, okay, when I dump here, I'm already moving to the left. And as I'm drawing, the gun's coming up to this target. Not I dump, then I move to the left. Okay, now I'm here and I got to draw. You have to plan that transition through and moving from right to left, left to right. And that kind of flow through the stage. It's number one, it makes the stage video look a hell of a lot better if you happen to throw it up on Instagram. but it ends up being a free half second to a second every time that you are able to transition through that smoothly. That's free time.
Yeah, and if you want like a good example of what Dylan's talking about, I would recommend going and over to the YouTubes and typing in Three Gun Nation Pro Series, because the old school Pro Series stages had like a massive amount of flow built into them,
Yes.
and the dudes that shot it the fastest flowed the hardest, and you can definitely tell when you're watching the matches.
Yeah, if you watch those in the old school Pro Series ones, not before they went to the Eliminator type format, but the actual stages, and especially when you walk through and you see some of the ones where Patrick Kelly would go through and shoot it in advance,
Yes.
and then you watch Daniel Horner go through it. He's one of the guys that you'll see is just the whole time. It's like, well, he didn't really do anything fast. I mean, he shot fairly normal. The splits weren't blistering, transitions weren't blistering, but how in the hell is he 6 seconds faster than everybody else? But he never stopped moving through the whole thing, or if he did stop, it was for very specific targets, and it was a very sure shot, and then he was moving again. Everything was very fluid.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. So number 10, lack of urgency when moving.
Yeah. So a good buddy of mine, Mark. I'll leave his last name out for a little anonymity, but Mark would go through, and we had a stage that we both shot in Arkansas at a section match for multi-gun, and he goes to the end. He goes, man, I just don't get it. You're 8 seconds ahead of me, and I literally took no makeup shots, and I had makeup shots, and 50, 60-second stage, and I pulled the trigger extra times. Wasn't one for one with the rifle or anything else, and he just couldn't figure out how he was behind. And so we looked at the stage video, and I finally hit the last shotgun target and dumped my pistol, and I sprinted, took off as hard as I could take off, and he dumped it, and standing straight vertically upright starts to kind of lightly jog. I'm like, well, there's 4 seconds there. And I noticed it a lot at the Zombies match, and I've seen it a lot at the other matches too. New shooters or people who just aren't comfortable running, the idea of taking off with an absolute sprint seems to be a difficult concept for some, and that's that urgency that you got to get moving. This is a timed event. In 3-gun, it seems to hurt more than elsewhere. So we have more ground to cover. So
That's for sure. So if someone's not taking the urgency to or when they're moving, where do they apply that urgency, Dylan?
Well, you don't apply it with the trigger. And that's one thing I notice a lot of them will do is they'll kind of trot along, and then they'll get to where they're going. They have their gun up and like a machine gun going off, and you're like, hey, you missed a lot. So if you would have run faster and shot slower, you would probably have done quite a bit better. I think a long time ago, I think Jake Latola kind of quoted, I think it was Daniel Horner. So to quote a quote, right? It was, shoot boring and do everything else fast.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to be the opposite when I see some new shooters who are really excited to shoot fast, and they do everything slow, and then they try to shoot fast. And you're not going to make up that lost time from kind of lollygagging through a stage till you get to your point and then going nuts with the trigger. The trigger does not reverse time. It is not a time machine. So that is not where I would try to make up time. The hard part that comes in, I think a lot of people, if you're having gear issues where if you're running along and your shotgun shells are falling out, you probably need to rethink what you're using.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't take off running and you're worried about your pistol coming out, you should probably rethink the holster you're using. And when we consider the amount of money we spend on the sport with guns, travel, hotels, everything else, those are some of the most inexpensive items. If we look at a sling, if I'm worried about my sling coming loose, my rifle falling off, why are you using that sling? A good sling is $40-$50. A really good holster, a hooded holster, a non-hooded, depending upon whether you got a lock or whatever, $80 to $120 for a really good one. If your shotgun shells are falling out, those are one of the cheapest pieces of gear that you can get. Get something that holds them secure, because if you get where you're going and you dropped all your shells, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
If you get where you're going, but you had to hold them the whole time, well, you kind of screwed yourself.
I'm surprised how many PMags I see flying all over the place. It's like, where where did you have that it was not secure enough that you couldn't run with it? It's
lot of
incredible.
pockets. A lot of
Yeah,
pockets.
there's a lot of pockets for sure, but like man, maybe you need to put it in the deeper pocket. Um, the in USPSA, the very first thing you do on a stage is draw your pistol all the
Yeah.
time, right? So like your holster is loose as hell, right? And then you're generally staying upright, so your pistol mag pouches are pretty loose. I have like my shit really tight for my rifle mag, for my pistol mags, and my my pistol has a hood on it, which I hate. But you almost have to, or not.
Yeah.
You have to have some sort of like active retention in the types of matches that I like to shoot, which are open terrain matches. So when I see someone lose a pistol mag, like I feel for them, but that's something that you could easily fix with like a screwdriver.
Yeah, a screwdriver and Allen wrench, and it's done.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I use the same mag pouches for USPSA that I do for 3-gun, and all I do is I have one mag pouch that is set up a little bit looser, and it's pretty easy to tell because it's one that's used the most, and so all the
Yeah.
finish is starting to rub off on it. That one goes front and center, and that's the one I'm going to reload out of, especially when shooting either limited or open in USPSA. You're not going to usually have more than one reload during a stage. So the ones I have after that, those are my oh shit mags, right? So
Yeah.
those are tightened down because they have to be there, because if I get to the end of the stage and something happened and I'd have to dump that mag and grab something else, if it's not there, I'm really, really screwed. So I can yank a little harder on that mag if needed. But yeah, my rifle mag, I've never had a rifle mag come out of my mag pouch. I have taken off running with cargo pants where I had a rifle mag in the kind of the side of your thigh, and got to the end of the stage and didn't have it. That was kind of a learning experience. So I've used several times. I've used coupled mags, like I'll use the MBX coupler where you can kind of swap them in and out. And I'll have a coupled mags sitting in my left front pocket on my pants. And it's worked great for years because it sits deep enough, like you said. Back pocket
Yeah.
with something longer than 30 rounder, probably not the best idea. So yeah, that seems to be that's a piece of gear that flies. And I've seen several people with pistol mags go flying. The minute we talk about having 140 millimeter and 170 millimeter pistol mags loaded full, a lot of that weight gets on the back end of that mag when you're running. So I'm kind of like you. I'd rather have my gear tightened down a little bit and not have to go home early or get somewhere and not have the ammo.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't have an example here, but the new oh wait, I do right here. I guess this is a Glock, but the new LAG tactical mag pouches, they're MCS. They're actually much longer than the old ones,
Yep.
especially the 2011 ones. And at first glance, when I saw the 2011 ones, because I was used to the Glock ones, I thought like, wow, that's way too long. I'm not going to be able to get a good purchase on the magazine. But then, in the context of what we're talking about here, I find a lot of value in that because they're so deep that most of the mass is in the pouch instead of out of the pouch, which means that when you are moving, it's being retained instead of like flopping around and creating a moment, which like an engineering moment, which will actually make it flop out of the pouch. So that's one thing that I find value in.
Think about the shape of your mag too. The last inch and a half on the end of that mag tapers down. So it's not likely to have a ton of contact surface in that area with most mag pouches. So like the mag pouches I'm using, luckily, I got to have some input on some of the design stuff. And so we opened up a little bit of a finger groove on the front where you can grab with your index finger, but it's still coming high up the sides. So tried to mesh those two worlds together to where I can still have a fast reload out of it, but then also go through and have the contact area that's going to go through and kind of resolve some of those issues. And it took a little bit to get that done, but we actually ended up kind of putting a funnel on everything. So at the top of it, kind of like what you've got there, you've got that little tiny funnel at the very top of it, just to be able to go through if I did have to grab something on a stage, that little funnel that I dip it into, like if you're mag starting on the table or whatever. I know at Trigun a few years ago, they had, everything started on the table. You had to run over and grab it. So I grabbed like 3 mags and stuffed them in the front pocket of a hoodie. That's super fast on a stage, by the way. That would have been easier to do that, or even like the USPSA guys use, have a magnet, and just didn't quite have all that stuff perfectly lined out at the time like what we do now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the I should finish that sentence. I've never found that I don't get a good purchase on the mag. So I think most of that's all in your head. You think that it's not going to be able to get good purchase, but it's more important to have it there.
Oh yeah, I'd rather have the mag there than get to the end and go, hey guys,
Yeah.
and I hope it's a coaching loud match because somebody can hand me a mag.
Yeah, exactly. Mag, bro, mag. Uh, okay, so we got the urgency with moving there. So Dylan, we got a question from Patrick Beckham in the chat. What's the best technique for shooting on the move without your sights swinging all over the place?
So BJ Norris kind of coached me a little bit on this one. We were we were not shooting, we were teaching the MGM junior camp out in Idaho, and we finished it, and I got to spend a day shooting with BJ, and we worked on a few different things, one of them being shooting on the move. The lower you get, the smoother you get. So the old school thing used to be the duck walk. The hard part, when the first time I tried to duck walk and shoot, the only gun that I could do it well with was the shotgun, because with the shotgun, I knew the recoil was going to be stiffer, so I got lower to handle it. But mentally, apparently I was a bit of an idiot and couldn't put two and two together. I would immediately stand up taller and try to duck walk standing vertically with pistol and rifle. And then I couldn't hit anything because the gun moves around. So the other thing that comes into it, if you're bending your knees and dropping down lower, also think about bending your elbows just a hair more, because now you can go through and everything works as a shock absorber, and you don't have your elbows locked out to where everything's rigid and that gun's being flopped back and forth. You can have that coming in, and now you can hold it here. And even if I come in just 3 or 4 inches and I have my arms as a shock absorber, I can move along there. And with the old school, do you remember the game where you had the spoon and you had the egg on the
Yes.
spoon? You had to run across the field, right? Did you
Yep.
ever extend your arm all the way out and run on your toes with knees locked?
No.
Not going to work well. You're not going to get there. So you stayed low and you kind of creeped along like you were trying not to make a noise to keep that on the spoon.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Like creeping along like you're not trying to make a noise, and then try to balance it. So you want to use all your soft tissue to be shock absorbers, right? Muscles, tendons, things like that.
Yep, all the little springs that the body affords you, little shock absorbers you can use. Take advantage of it.
Yeah. All right. So that wraps up our top 10 things that are holding you back in 3-gun. Dylan, I got a bonus 11th. You ready, buddy?
Bring it on.
You're not listening to the 3-gun show.
How else are you going to get the tips?
How else are you going to get the tips?
No tips, no tricks otherwise.
That's right. That's right. So, all right. Well, Dylan, final thought before we tell the audience good night here. Anything you want to impart to the people that are listening to us?
If I were going to toss one thing, I'd say, we got a lot of people who shoot one thing or the other. Keep in mind that the best success I've had has been after breaking things off and specializing it. So you want to get good at long range, go shoot some PRS. Keep in mind they're pretty much the same people that we are in 3-gun, but they're specializing in one thing. You want to get better at pistol, go shoot that. Unfortunately, we don't have a good analogy for that with shotgun at the moment. One day we may have some IPSC long gun stuff that you can go shoot. But if you're able to go and specialize in those things a little bit to practice and kind of use those opportunities to compete with something you can focus on, when you come back to 3-gun and somebody's complaining about hitting a 4-inch by 6-inch plate at 18 yards, you're like, well, it's not that bad. Because you know how to make that shot, and it's a little easier because of all the reps that you have in actually competing.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I've got some cross training coming up in my life on my schedule here, and you're going to hear about it here on the 3-gun show. Dylan, thank you so much for coming up with this awesome topic, man, and thanks for doing the research and the legwork to fill out your list. Thanks for being on the 3-gun show, man. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you having me back.
Everybody listening, thank you for listening to the 3-gun show. Always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you to IWI, Vortex Optics, and JP Enterprises who sponsor the show, and of course the 3-gun patrons who make it all possible. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you on the range.